and like, wow, this entire industry that I rely on for my kind of medical security isn't taking care of my health, and that's very and the really disturbing thing is that there's this government, there seems to be this emerging governance pharmaceutical sort of partnership where if I'm disillusioned by the pharmaceutical industry and I decide I don't want to take your products, well, sometimes the government says you've got to take it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really terrifying. So I think like Bitcoin came after the financial industry collapsed, and people were like, wow, my money might not be safe. And I think I think there was a similar shock of like, wow, my body might not be safe, and the government can just force me to take something that could cripple me or even kill me, and they won't let me say no, and even if I'm a law-abiding citizen. So yeah, that's what made me that's one of the things that really made me think about like what kind of what kind of strategies could you pursue to protect yourself in a worst case scenario.
Yeah, we don't know the long term effects of this. So I agree with you here completely. Yeah, I didn't know that it goes as deep for your interest in these alternative parallel economies. Cool. And I think the topic of longevity and sovereignty of health is very hot right now within the network state space, but yet these kind of spaces are very separated to talk about health and longevity. And longevity is also very ego driven and like, oh, I just want to live forever, but not really a lot of people are speaking it, but about it from the angle that you were talking about it. So there is an opportunity there. Yet this content might be shadow banned and might affect the whole channel. So I'm trying to cut it smartly so we are
Yeah, it's up to
protected.
you. It's up to you whether you want to cut it or not. But at the same time, I'm actually I'm just so shocked at at the fact that this is shadow banned. That it shouldn't be controversial.
Yeah.
People talking about the safety of potential products that could injure them. There's nothing that should be controversial about that. I mean, I
True.
can understand why racism is shadow banned because that can harm people, but like people literally talking about the safety of products that could harm them, that should be so fundamental in terms of what people are allowed to do, and the fact that these kind of things do get shadow banned systematically is appalling. Mm.
Tell me about your plans with network polity and generally your perspective of the future, how you'd like to take next steps in developing its, let's say, influence in the network state environment, and what are you currently focusing on to, yeah, do something that is, let's say, coordinating a large amount of people.
Um, I'm sort of at the moment. I'm going to try and team up with Pedro. I think actually the first step is to just get people physically together.
Yeah.
Uh, like I think we had a conversation a while back in was it that thing with Zeev? What was it called again?
Yeah.
Conscious state, something like that? Yeah. But where Zeev said basically the problem with pop-up cities is the overheads. The whole idea of just that, that if you have an event that has high overheads where you're paying sort of high hotel bills, you're eating out at restaurants, uh, paying money to hear thought leaders talk, you're buying there's like tickets, hotel bills, restaurants, you're excluding a huge portion of the human population because like
Sure.
it's really only the people who are doing quite well economically that are going to be able to afford it. I think I think the first stage is actually to become a permanent neighborhood. And when I say neighborhood, you don't even need to buy a village. You just living in kind of living in cheap housing in and because there's areas where houses are very cheap in the countryside. Just getting people with similar interests living in cheap sort of accommodation in an area that's affordable, and just kind of and like, even if people are 5 miles away from each other, like if you can bike ride to somebody else's house, that's good enough. And just having people in areas where it's affordable, where there's land, where they can grow vegetables, maybe not meet all the requirements, but sort of, but like, but sort of, I like the concept of perishables. Grow your perishables, and then you can stock up on the dry weight stuff like grain or chickpeas or whatever. But just going to grow perishables and maybe even have some chickens or whatever. And just have these people living in villages of the countryside. Maybe they own a plot. Maybe it's in their back garden. Maybe it's a plot of land the farmer sold them or something like that. 100 yards away or something like that. And they kind of growing their own food, and they're meeting up and they're talking, and that, I think that's the phase one. Phase one is actually getting people who have the right skills in an area where living is affordable, just talking to each other and planning to create software infrastructure in that way. And then phase two is I guess coding the DAOs and coding the DAOs to govern real world assets. I think real world, and there's two things. There's the coding of the DAOs, and then the law work. So you've got the developers and you've got lawyers. There's the coding of the DAOs, and which is the developer work, with the DAO governance, and then there's converting the DAO governance into access rights in the real world, which the national court system will defend, and that's contract law. So you need coders and lawyers, and then you need people using the DAOs to maintain assets. And I think so. I think phase one is actually, I'm kind of interested in going to North Spain, maybe Galicia, that kind of stuff. I mean, Portugal's a nice place, but I've noticed that house prices double the instant you go across the border. That they're just that probably the cheapest house in Portugal you can get is probably about 80,000. Cheapest house in Spain is maybe like, well, you can quite easily get a house for 30,000 in Spain, and maybe even lower if you're lucky. So I think Spain, but more than Portugal, I'm kind of interested in terms of buying, and then hopefully convince people with the right skills. I think coding, law, and then I think DIY and stuff like that, because DIY, farming, that kind of stuff. So you want to govern the thing, but then you actually want something to govern. The whole purpose of governance is to coordinate human beings to provide for their real needs. So you need underlying activity where members of the polity are actually producing for their needs. So it's production, development, and then law. And the whole idea is to create like mobility as well, to facilitate not just self-sufficiency, but multinational self-sufficiency. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult. You often have only two choices in the world. When it comes to disasters, you only have two. You often have, like, I think at the moment you have two choices. You either buy a load of grain and beans and sort of hunker down, or you get the hell out and become a refugee. So you either try and be relatively secure in a system that's going to hell, or you get out of hell, but you end up at the bottom of the pile, the bottom of the social hierarchy, in a safer place somewhere else. But it's like if you leave your country, and you kind of go to another country where things are better run and much safer, quite often you end up in a refugee camp, all sorts of visa, immigration issues, and that's not fun either. But like it's like if you're in Ukraine, preppers talk about sort of buying grain and beans and shotguns and all that kind of stuff. But imagine if you're a Ukrainian prepper and you've got your house and you buy all this grain and beans to like survive the apocalypse, and then Russia invades Ukraine. Like what you should really do is you should get the hell out of Ukraine. Like that's if you care about survival, get out of Ukraine. But if you built all this, if you've done the prepper thing and you've got all this supplies, then you're essentially leaving all your supplies behind. So I think we need to combine kind of self-sufficiency with mobility, and also have and then combine that with a communication system that's secure, as well as some kind of a monetary system that's also sort of secure and independent of banks or that kind of thing, and also a passport, a non-territorial passport.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read that bit about non-territorial passports?
Yes,
That,
yes.
like, yeah.
And what do you think about that still, like, direction of social credit, or as you call them, karma points, being a little bit potentially restricting and potentially unfair for people, because they're not looking at the overall holistic situation of how these karma points are earned? How would you avoid that, like, AI slash technology algorithmic structure factor versus the human factor, where's empathy?
I think like one of the good things about the network polity is because it doesn't involve land. It's not really a zero sum game. That if I own a piece of land, somebody else doesn't own a piece of land. But information has no limit, and as such, there's really no limit on the number of network polities that can be developed. So in the book, The Network Polity, I lay a general framework for the polity, for what a network polity would look like. But there doesn't have to be any unique network polity. There can be many different polities, many different network polity passports. The number of network polities is really limitless, because information is limitless. So you could have loads of different people forming loads of different polities, and each one of those polities could have a different karma point system. And also, you don't even need to be a member of just one. You can probably be a dual citizen of multiple network polities and collect karma points in multiple different polities. So each polity has a unique karma point system. I think the idea of social credit is, I think it's just necessary in a civilization. That reputation is fundamental to large civilizations. That you kind of that you in a small society, people just know you, and it can be done informally. But in a large society, the notion of who you are, that you're an honest person, that you're a capable person, that you have skills, that all requires certification and reputation. You go to a stranger and you tell them, I've got these skills. I'm an honest guy. Trust me, bro. And how's the stranger going to believe you? And ultimately, the way the stranger believes you is that you provide certificates. It's like, here's my degree. Oh, okay, you've got a degree. That's a very reputable institution. Here's my kind of I've got here's my police certificate saying I don't have a criminal record. It's like, okay, fair enough. And when you're getting a job and that kind of stuff, I think ultimately we actually do need credit, and we shouldn't be avoiding credit. What we actually should be doing is ensuring that we have multiple credit systems. The credit isn't a problem. The problem is a monopoly on credit. So the problem with the Chinese social credit system is there's this one entity that gives you this one score, and this score is the only thing that you have to show that you're a reputable, decent person. And if that one entity decides to score you down, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do, because they have the monopoly on deciding your reputableness.
Good point.
What we actually need is we need multiple entities with multiple scores, so that if I don't like this particular entity, the way this particular entity is going to score me, I can take my energy away from trying to get a good score with this entity and invest my energy into this other network polity I prefer the scoring system of, and if that becomes corrupt, I'll invest my energy into another network polity and try and get a good score on that network polity. And maybe you might even want to join several network polities and build up karma in both different polities at the same time. So if one breaks down, you've got something else to hold on to. And I think it's and I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to be, it's not the choice isn't going to be infinite. There's going to be some of the polities are going to get a higher reputation than others, and it's this interaction between the reputation of the entity that issues the score and the score itself. So you can probably join. You can get anyone to give you a high score. I can give you a high score, but maybe nobody cares. Whereas if the state gives you a high score, people do care. So there's this complex dance between the state or the institution getting generally high recognition as being reputable, and then the individuals kind of wanting to get scored by the institution. But yeah, just choice. None of these systems are going to be perfect. They're always going to be open to criticism. But if there's many of them, I think that's probably the best we can do.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right. Awesome. Okay, let's wrap it up. It's been more than 45 minutes, so let's. This is the last question I ask, and usually the plan is to do this interview 4 times within the next 4 years. So we will hopefully meet again in this one-on-one setting and see how your thought leadership has developed in your language, your opinions on things. But currently this question has been repeating across all the people that I'm inviting, and I'll be asking it again. So we are 10 years ahead in 2035. What you're proud of, what we've been able to accomplish, what kind of world we live in, and share some of your visions of what's actually possible within these 10 years' time.
Well, so what would I be proud of if I could accomplish by 2035? I mean, I guess if we had a timeshare system that was organized by DAOs, where people could where people could kind of buy timeshares in multiple communities in multiple different countries. I'd be very proud about that. And if also like a network polity passport, that would be helpful as well. I mean, the other thing is I've sort of in the beginning of the network polity, I criticized some of Balaji's network state ideas, and I think it's very dangerous to say we're just going to buy a load of property and then boom, we're a country, because that's secession, and that's not. I don't think that's even legal in accordance with international law. But I think if you have a community, that does create potentially a starting point for negotiating sovereignty. I don't think we should aim for sovereignty, because ultimately it's something that a country has to give. But potentially, if the opportunity arises and a country wants a country maybe wants money and they've got some bad lands they're not using anyway, could we start a country in 10 years' time? I don't know. It wouldn't be a big one, but I think that would also potentially be possible. So I guess timeshares and accommodation in a way that's run by a DAO rather than a standard corporate vehicle. Network polity passport, and I'm not going to say a country. I'm just going to say network polity passport. Maybe a country, maybe a small country.
Awesome, beautiful. Thank you so much, John. You're a legend. Thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
I wanted to invite you